Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And I've been talking to you this week about promises in the Bible from the letters in the New Testament. And today I want to talk about the letter of James. Now, it's a small letter, about 4 or 5 chapters, I think. And it doesn't have a lot of things that typically people read about. And the one that I'm going to read this morning probably just sort of gets passed over almost. It comes from the first chapter. And always in these letters, the first chapter, you'll have greetings and salutations and some explanation before it ever really gets to the meat of the thing. And we have to remember that these letters were actual letters that were written for a purpose to a particular audience. So in this case, James writes this letter. And in verse 2, it says this: Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested and your endurance has a chance to grow, so let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Now, this is an interesting verse, or a couple of verses. Interesting in the sense that I would say they're kind of strange. It says, brothers and sisters, meaning to people who are walking with God. Now, if you're not walking with God, I guess this promise doesn't actually apply, but you can walk with God if you're not, so we'll say it does for everybody. When troubles of any kind come your way. Now, that's a pretty generalized statement. Troubles of any kind. Physical, emotional, relational. I don't know that James was thinking about financial or career, but if he were speaking today, he would. Any kinds of those troubles. When troubles of any kind come. Now, here's what you're supposed to do. Now, what most of us do when those troubles come is, first off, worry. And as I've said, and you can think about it, worrying doesn't accomplish a thing. Nothing good comes from it. But boy, does it consume an awful lot of our energy and our thought time. Many people can't even sleep when they get worried. So it doesn't say when troubles come, worry. It says when troubles come, consider the trouble as an opportunity for great joy. Now let that sit there for a minute. When troubles come, consider the trouble as an opportunity for great joy. Do you hear how strange that sounds? I mean, that is the diametrically opposite of what normally happens. I remember one time in Honduras, had this dentist. He was kind of weird. He really was. But he's a really good dentist. And I don't know that he was a man of great faith, but every once in a while he would say something that was profound. In any case, we usually drove back and forth in pickup trucks, and for some reason, his truck was ahead of our truck, and his truck broke down. And he was about an hour ahead. I don't know whether we were late starting or something, but in any case, finally we come across the truck, and he's sitting there on top of the cab reading a book. And I get there and I said, well, what's going on, guys? He says, well, the truck broke down. And this dentist speaks up. He said, yeah, I knew when you got here you'd figure it out, so I just decided to read a book. Now, the other people weren't reading books, but he said, I knew when you get here you'd figure it out. Well, as it turned out, we figured it out, and it was okay. But the attitude that in the midst of this trouble, someone, in this case me, since I'm the one in charge here, is going to come along and take care of it, so I might as well relax and enjoy my book. If we would look at troubles with the same kind of attitude, we have a trouble. Oh, this is an opportunity for great joy. You see how that gets turned on its head? I mean, goodness, troubles don't bring joy. They bring sadness and sorrow. But James is saying in this promise, it's an opportunity for great joy. Because he says, for you know, when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Okay, that makes sense. We have to grow in our lives, in our relationship. And how are we going to grow without some kind of experience that helps us to grow? And in this case, troubles really can help us to grow a lot more than non-troubles. When we not having troubles, we tend to take things for granted and take ourselves and our abilities and decide that maybe we can actually overcome anything. But when we get a trouble that just consumes us, we realize we can't do a thing. He says, so you know that when your faith is tested and your endurance has a chance to grow. Now listen to this. James says, let it grow. Let what grow? Let your endurance grow. Let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Now let's go back over this a little bit. The statement is when troubles come, what are you going to do? Well, you got a couple choices here. You can depend on yourself or other skilled people, and maybe that will solve the problem. Or you can depend on them and the Lord. You do that, and you really got a winning team. And while you're struggling with this thing, recognize it's an opportunity for your patience or endurance to grow. And as that grows, you are better able to deal with problems that come later. You know, it's like math. You start out doing little things, then you get into more complicated things, and then you get into the more complicated algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and then if you keep going, you get into calculus and three-dimensional calculus and all of those sort of things. You can't start out at the top. You have to work your way along. Well, you can't start out with a faith that overcomes everything. You have to start out with a small one. And the promise is here, when those troubles come, God is active. And when we allow him to be active and recognize it, then we eventually get to the point where we don't need anything because he's totally in charge. Like my dentist sitting up there reading his book. Well, you think about it today. Hope you have a wonderful day. If there's anything we can do to help you, we'll do everything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow and finish up this conversation about promises from the letters in the Bible.